Not a problem.
Okay. So they don't get too. I should have waited till it was 40, but it's all good. But you know, when you have that existential experience of what you had a desire to do when you started, it even says on my website, you can even take a fantasy trip and do whatever you want to do. You know, they have a movie. They have a movie that's out, and it's an old movie, but it's about the future where you can download these memories and go through this whole thing. You know, through this whole spiel. You don't even need the app. You don't need the technology. You can actually do it. If you, how important is it that if it's absolutely correct what they're saying, if you believe that there's a base on the other side of the moon and you get over there and that's what you see, then that's what you're going to see. But I'm always going to ask question, when is this? Is it within the 2015, 2016
But
timeline?
a
Is
person,
this something from a past? Is it something from the future? Is it something, a probability? I always ask those questions to make sure, and you just take it however you're going to take it, you know. But
right? But to deconstruct, is it fair to say that Lars came up with an answer to the question, "What's going on the other side of the moon?" And because of an alternative data set, a conclusion was reached that Lars had come up with the wrong answer, that he was occluded from the truth, that he was scared of the reality of what was happening on the moon, and that's why he saw nothing. Why can't it be that he was correct and all the other jumbos are just pulling from the collective unconscious or what they want to have be real on the other side of the moon? Because we
well,
know that just like
the thing about it is, particular people that I ask are people who haven't watched all my videos, who aren't following, faithfully trying to ascertain everything that's being said and breaking it down and seeing if it's correct or seeing if it's not or weighing against each other. I always ask it randomly, and particularly to people who I know absolutely nothing about anything. And the thought is still, even no matter what they say, you still have to take it all with a grain of salt. It's not so much that he was so wrong. Do you know what I mean? He said that wasn't there. So, but you have his point is valid. Everyone, as hard as it may seem, in my reality, and I probably consider probably the craziest of the crazies as far as I'm concerned. But I don't
you got a
believe
lot of
that the universe
competition
that
out there.
I live in is the same one that you live in. The only
Right.
time we're interacting is when we're co-creating together. I mean, as soon as I turn this video off and I don't see you, you know, Dolores Cannon called people background people. That's just background to fill in for what you're focused on while you're here, with what you're doing, what your purpose was, or what your intention was when you decided to lower your vibration into this to physicality to do what we're doing here. All of that stuff really makes sense to me. But I'm 52 years old. It's not from just one particular scenario. It's from so many things that over and over and over and over, these experiences that I've been having, do you know what I'm saying, that lead me to the
Right.
conclusion. But like I always say, and I still, like I say, you don't have to believe everything, and most of the people aren't channeling. They're literally standing in front of. So when the person stands in front of you and she has long doe ears and she's this short and she has on a shawl and she lives in the Shire in her little round red room and and she's speaking and she's like a fucking hobbit and she goes, but I'm your mother. And the two deers that we had as pets are your two sisters now in this life. And they're giving you all this information and all this stuff comes back. And then the woman calls you a year later and say, oh my God, Hank, that session that we did, I'm no longer depressed about my mom because I know she's in a good place. I
Right.
now have a great job. I'm going back. I found a really good church. And I just want to call you and thank you because I love you so much because there was something about your voice. There's something about you that really helped me get through what I've gotten through. But and another thing that is really, really interesting is when you're doing these sessions and all these people are calling you back a year, 2 years, 3 years later, or whenever they get back and they go, man, Ever since I started listening to you, and then once we did that session, I mean, so many other questions were opened up for me. But I mean, just like you said, in some type of crazy synchronicity, everything started happening and their life has totally changed around. And it's been a very positive thing. That's the part that I like about it. I'm the least expensive person on the United States. I'm absolutely sure I am. And I
Well,
do so many for free. So many for free. Do you know how many hours that it takes? I was with you for 6 hours. And then you said something on one video,
yeah,
another video, about how people could charge money for it. And I was like, what are you talking about,
sure.
CW? I'm like, I went through years of training and I'm not a dumbass to be able to ask the right questions to get to
Right.
you know what I'm saying? And then I spend six
No,
hours
no, I hear you. I hear you.
and you're thinking it's not
Well,
worth it?
listen. Listen. Well, no, no, no. Well, so here's the question. Here's the question. There's a lot of. See, it's amazing because rewinding. I'm sitting here. Well, that's a interesting topic that should be fleshed out, explored. That's an interesting topic that should be fleshed out and explored. The charging. Let's put that on the side because that's a big complicated issue. I mean, but let me ask you this, Corey Good. Let's say Corey Good goes on stage in Tempe, Arizona, 2 months from now, and he says three things. He says, "Hello, my name is Corey Good. I have a message here from the Sphere Being Alliance, and the message is essentially the universal message of love, peace, and harmony that you've heard expounded by so many world teachers, but we still have yet to fail to listen to. But they're here to yet again, in the endless cycle of repeating the answer, repeating the answer, repeating the answer, the law of one, the law of love, what have you."
Blah, blah,
And the
blah.
third thing, yeah, the third thing he says is, and invest in physical silver and gold because the cabal is going to be arrested about 3 or 4 months from now if everything goes according to schedule. At least that's what I heard from Lieutenant Gonzalez. Okay. Or outside that can look at things and say to themselves three pieces of information. There's an evaluation that can be done to come to a conclusion about whether or not him saying that or whether or not people believing that is a good or a bad thing.
Well, I understand that, but that has absolutely nothing to do with what I do. See, because he's saying he's having those particular experiences, they're coming to his house and picking him up. I don't
Right.
know. I know one thing. The blue orb showed up at my house and I have them on film. And not just one, several. Over and
Right.
over and over. Do you know what I'm saying? And so
Right.
anything he has to say, I mean, I unsubscribed to Gaiam, just for reasons that we spoke about. You know what I'm saying? I said, oh, okay, I'll catch it anyway. If you're going to catch it anyway, do you know what I'm saying? You're still going to catch it. That's why I like to do these sessions and go and ask and explore myself. Every time I hear one of these jokers say something and they say it in those capacities, it's more than likely it's something I've written down and I'm going to ask that question. Just getting back to what I did and what you did, because who cares what Corey did? You had the session. You were the one who said that extraterrestrial was blue and short and with the thing on his head and all that
Right.
business. And you were the one who was convinced that you weren't making it up and you were or even trying to make it up.
Right.
And it was you who confessed, who said, "Oh my God, Hank, this is fuzz balls, cool balls." I wrote it down.
Yeah, no, but look. Okay, so here, let me tell you a true life story. The true life story goes something like this. It's me. I'm outside. I'm near. We've broken. Me and a couple of buddies have broken in after hours to the Patterson Falls in New Jersey, a very famous landmark. William Carlos Williams, the poet, made an amazing poem immortalizing the Patterson Falls. Oddly enough, the Patterson Falls are now in a very bad part of New Jersey, just socioeconomically. And I won't go into too many details because I don't want to, incriminate the innocent or myself. But let's just say that I found myself staring into a wooded area, and my friend turned to me and he said, "Hey Ben," I said, "Yeah." He goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, and I turned to him and I said, with all due respect, I have to confront my greatest fear. I have to go into this wooded glen and confront the Elephant Man. And he goes, what? And I start screaming and I run into this forest, screaming because I know I'm about to confront my ultimate fear, the Elephant Man. And you know what happened? I ran into the woods. And then eventually I turned around and it was amazing. I got a lot out of it. I confronted the fear. I rushed into the darkness, but it was the woods.
That
And so
still
if I
has.
see if I see a blue alien, I tell you as clear as I can tell you that it was like I was watching a movie that was made only for me. I can recall these events. I can recall the audiovisual and sometimes olfactory stimuli. I remember
And remember what he told you?
Maria. I remember. Yeah, I remember a
He
lot of
says,
these things.
I am changing my form to make you more comfortable.
But at the same time, I have to listen. But this is just. But I can dream at night that a whole bunch of scenarios. Do you know what I mean? That are not true. They're the
But
product
those
of my
scenarios
imagination.
aren't guided the way in the same way that these particular sessions are
So
guided. And so
so
I
you
just
have
guided you there. You were the one who said everything that you said.
right.
I think that you have a misconception because over and over you keep tying what we did to channeling, what Corey is
No,
saying in his real life experiences, nothing to do with Corey. Nothing. Zero
I
zilch.
okay.
It
So
has
I'm
absolutely nothing to do with channeling unless if you would have given the person, remember the Hispanic lady who was all meek
yeah,
and family blood,
and I'm
had you had an
convinced you would say
opportunity to let her speak through you, you would have allowed her to channel through you, but you didn't. But that's cool. That's why I say, you know why? This is why I had a desire. You guys, this is what's really going on. I told Chanter, I put out a video because Lars and I are no longer doing sessions. This is something we just decided, probably in the future or something. We may or we may
right.
not. It just depends or whatever. But I put out this thing and I said I really would like to. I'm looking for someone else to do sessions like we did with Lars. And then CW says, Hank, I'd love to share more energy with you because we've done it before. And I said, okay, awesome, let's do this. And he goes, okay. He says, first, after we take care of blah 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 blah, Christmas and all that stuff is over, I will actually make it a point. And here we are now. First, we're going to discuss it because we've been discussing his session. He keeps trailing off into other things, but I have to keep reeling
I
him back. I'm
no.
reeling
Well,
him back because those things that he's bringing up have nothing to do with what he and I did, because that was his personal experience that he was having. And you tell me why the alien was there. You tell me why that Hispanic lady was there. And then all those things you said. Remember when Symbol came out? And Symbol was like a huge teardrop with an eye in it. But Symbol
yeah,
was the size of a 6-story building. And you were like a little ant sitting next to it. And this is your higher self. This all came out of your mind. And yes, you did make it up. I tell everyone in session, you're going to make it up. You're going to speak to other aspects of yourself. But there's only you in the first place. See, that's a whole another thing. People
yeah,
have a lot of information, but they have no wisdom whatsoever. It's just a lot of fucking information. Because if you don't know how to apply this information that you have to your life, then there's no wisdom involved whatsoever. You just have
right.
a lot of information, and it's useless information, but you have to apply it. There is only one.
So
And
okay. So
as you
I,
create me to have this conversation with, and we're co-creating this, you're co-creating everything that you experience. It was you creating it. If you have a desire for there to be a base on the other side of the moon, awesome would it be to go and see?
well,
I
yeah, but
have
no,
no
no,
idea. We have
right,
no idea if it's going to be there or not. I mean, we've been told, Lars was told, other people were told, Lars didn't see him. You did. Other people didn't see him. They did. Other people did. It doesn't really matter. The thought behind it is there's always a loving message that comes through in all of these sessions, and always some really good advice that people could take to heart in terms of how they think and how they're doing things and how
yeah,
they
no,
are, we are all connected.
right.
That is the most important part. All of it's like Alex Jones, not Alex Jones. I'll take him out of this. I'll say David Icke. David Icke says all these different things. And people are like, oh, David Icke is so extreme. He's so, who gives a rat's ass? You know what David Icke does? He gets the person who would never pay any fucking attention to any of this type of stuff. They'll start listening because he got them. But once they're here, I always think the truth was going to ring. It's going to ring true because now you're listening to him. Before you know it, you're exposed to this, you're exposed to this. And all of a sudden you can start getting all this information. You have the gift of discernment. You have free will to choose what best suits you. As long as he brings them to the table, that's all that matters. Everybody needs to come to the table. That's one thing that I love about Donald Trump. I would not listen to a word that he said all the way through. And I heard all those people talking all this shit. And then my partner said, Hank, Donald is accepting his nomination for the Republican nominee. I'm like, get out of here. So I got to go hear the speech. And then he starts to speak. And then all of a sudden my mouth is down to my feet because he's talking about the Internal Revenue Service. He's talking about, NAFTA. He's talking about all of these different things that a lot of people would have no idea whatsoever had he not said them. He woke up a lot of people with this whole movement. And I always say, when white folks you start taking white folks' money away from them, I'm telling you, you're going to have your fucking revolt. Some shit's going to go down. They're going to stop that. They don't play. I said, that's one thing they know. I always say that. And I already knew. And here he comes. And he goes, you see how many? 30, 40,000 people always lined up. There was nobody ever in that woman's. And, I don't even like to use people's names. I'm so glad we started talking about Eric earlier. Where we didn't get into the last name and who and what and where. I don't like to use people's names, but to just the understanding of it. It's just an understanding of it. Woke up a lot of people to stuff that would have never been able, that people wouldn't have been able to put it together. Because they're so brainwashed and so trained to believe certain things. The devil, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being the devil's advocate. But if you know something, now you were the one who said that you were a trans channeler and that you go to different places and do all those things. But I never heard that in that interview while you were sitting there talking about channelers and stuff like that. And I was like, well, why didn't he?
Well, it's very interesting because a lot of it gets into, it's almost, we have to admit that in this culture, that there's a lot of people with very dogmatic belief structures who assume that because they're not part of an organized religion, they don't have a dogma.
But if they come here to this channel and hear this conversation, change it. It's America, okay? How easy it to go, oh, nah, these two crazy. Look at that one, the beard and that little fat one over the next. Black and white people mixing, what's going on? Jews and Gentiles, what now? Next. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah.
Who cares? Who cares?
Listen, but I mean, that's the question, because here's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Is that my attitude about it is this. There's no doubt in my mind that when I had the guided visualization experience,
yes, sir,
that at the time that I experienced amazing phenomena, number one. And then number two, within the journey and post the journey, pieces of information came through that were revealed to me that were real gold as far as fueling transformation and internal change.
Did you say validation? I'm saying
there were growing points. There were real pieces of data that helped me gain some insight into myself, just like dropping acid, right? You come through the experience at the tail end and you put it together and you say, even if I never did that again, this, and this meant something and was a revelation.
Yes.
So the same thing with people who go to mediums to talk to a departed loved one. It's not that I'm saying that these things can't result in real gestalt, real transformation energy, real change, and be real healing protocols to help people integrate with the experience of being in a different dimension than the loved one, however you want to visualize it or describe it, or gaining insight to an internal narrative that they might not have shown a spotlight on, or wasn't
Yeah,
known.
whatever they say.
Right.
Because remember, that's all I'm doing is asking the questions. You
Right.
give me a list of questions, and I write down the questions, and then I take you in, and then whatever, and I tell everyone, this is you talking to yourself. You're going to create everything that you see. It's all going to be in your mind. It's no one else,
Right.
because there's only one in the first place. I said, and I could explain that, but I just call that premise. And so,
Okay.
and that's it.
So right.
And when, say for instance, Dolores Cannon, when I spoke about, I said, I remember the first time I thought about Dolores after she passed, and I was like, man, I'm done all these sessions. I haven't ever tried to talk to her. I said, I wonder if it would even be possible if Dolores would come forward. That's all I said was. And they go, there's a woman here. I said, what's she look like? And then he said, well, she looks like Dolores. And I said, hey, Dolores, is that you? And she goes, yes. And I said, well, I had a series of questions that I wanted to ask you. Would you mind? She says, no, not at all. I said, well, I started asking her about Skype. I started asking her about a whole bunch of things. It's all there. It's all there. Do you know what I mean? And then she even told me some other stuff about her offspring or whatever. And of course, I talked to the offspring afterward. I never told her. I said, I would never call you and say that someone has said or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? The best part about it is, for me, is when I taught, and I teach traditional Chinese medicine. That's what was my specialty when I was teaching for the past 3 years. And I'm teaching shiatsu, craniosacral, acupressure, as opposed to acupuncture, so with the fingers or whatever. These are all talking about the meridians on the bottom and the energy that flows through your body. I always have to convince my students that the energy is there first. So and that's pretty easy for me to do. So after I get them past that, then I have to put the whole program together for them to get the understanding of how this actually works. There's so many things that you can prove to see that everything is energy. Do you know what I mean? It's just as simple as taking your shoes off and rubbing your socks against carpet and then walk up to your wife and touch her. And it goes, do you know what I'm saying? Well, how do you think that happens? You know what I'm saying? So, and the only thing I'm saying here is that every single individual person has a different scenario. I've ran into a group of people, say for instance, who said they were thorax. They had wings, they had a tail, they're about 4 or 5 feet, they lived to be thousands of years old, they had like a bluish white, and they could fly. And they made this stuff like honey or something, and they ate it and they cured themselves with it. They did everything with this shit, and they lived in a fucking hive. Oh my God, listen to me. Anyway, but you understand what I'm saying? 3 people. And then in the session, I said, well, one was my nephew, because he said he was, and they don't even know each other. One lives in Ohio, one lives here in Houston, the other one lives in Michigan. 3 different people in 3 different places. And I did them all together, and they all say that they know each other. They don't know each other in this life, but they know each other from you tell me, are they telling the truth or are they lying? Do you know how many people this one person, she came through, her name was Maya. But then she always came through with Lars. And then I do this girl from Great Britain, and then Maya shows up for her. And then she starts talking about Maya. And then I did the session with Krista Riza. And then Krista Riza starts telling me about me no longer doing sessions with Lars anymore, and saying that I was going to have a whole new group of more advanced people to do this with. And I was like, I didn't say it. I didn't say it. One guy told me Trump was going to be the president, and he's a factory worker in Illinois. And he said that immigration reform would be his big thing. I know this guy for a fact. He don't know jack stuff about. He don't pay any attention to any of that type of thing. That's just not his cup of tea or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden, what is Trump's biggest thing? Well, maybe he heard it. Who knows? But but there are several people. But I asked Krista Riza she's like, I hate politics. I don't know anything about it. And because I said, who would be the president? Because we were in the future or something. And I was asking her to look back.
Right. So Hank, we all know the litany of questions and challenges that the scientific community, the skeptic community, would raise at these points. Whether it's the collective unconscious, we all hear things every day we're not aware of, like the blue avian thing. You're not aware of how many websites you click over. If you're into new age types of methodologies or mediumships, you don't know what you overheard, saw in a book 10 years from now stuck in your brain. Or
But what if I personally have told you that I have had interactions with the blue avian, and then I show you pictures that I drew 10 years ago before Corey Good ever said a fucking word about blue avians, and I already was drawing them? What if I show you pictures that I drew of them when I was a
now
little
listen,
kid? Do you know what I'm
but
saying?
listen, but I'm telling you, so you're talking to a legitimized motherfucker who can tell you that I've seen an alien face to face because of this guided visualization. I shit you not, I could smell the motherfuckers. It was as real as real as real
In my
to
session,
me.
in our session?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Having said that, do I think that that's enough to go on to say that this entity really exists somewhere within a manifest reality and isn't just a product of what's going on in my brain? I mean, the knowledge of, even the cutting edge of neuroscience when compared to what we don't know about the brain, is like,
This is
at
why
the edge coming.
C.W. Chanter is the perfect person to do this with me.
I agree, but
Because when I put you under, we're going to ask those questions.
and we'll come up with it, and we'll come up with answers. But let me ask,
Well, the thing about it is, see, this is, I have to tell you, intent, agenda for me. I just
right.
want people to know they're so much more than what they think they are. They're so much more than what they think they are. And if they believe that they're limited and that they're made in the image of someone who will burn them for an eternity for not doing A, B, and C and jumping through whatever hoop or whatever.
So
Ah.
I don't, but I mean, look, I mean, my experience after the session is that here's what happens to me all the time. I'll get contacted. There's a couple of things that I do on my channel. There's basically two or three things that I do. I have live sessions with a whole group of people all talking at once about a random assortment of nutty things. Those are fun as all get out. I have videos where I talk about my own spiritual practice and beliefs, Commonwealth chanting. And then I have videos where I talk about problems and players in the community, the New Age community, conspiracy community, however you want to define it. And I'll tell you this, happens all the time. People will contact me and they'll say to me the following. They'll say, thank God you called out that bullshit motherfucker, Shane the fucking room. That guy telling people that he's an Illuminati insider, that he went to the deep underground military bases, that he spoke to giants, that he confronted a 30,000-year-old vampire woman. What a load of crap. And CW, I got to tell you, the reason that I'm able to say, number one, thank God you're here telling people that this guy's full of shit, is because, number two, I know the reality of the situation because I talk to giants. I'm an Illuminati insider, have been to the deep underground military bases, and know what's really up, and therefore know that this guy is totally full of it. Right? And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Or the other thing is this: is that
But
I go
here's the
through the
thought.
session
Here's
with
the
you,
thought about
but
what we're
but
talking about.
but well, here's the thing. Here's the thing is that I don't think you're very. I'm not trying to be obstinate, but it's amazing to me because I really feel as though if I've got a purpose in Hank Jones's life, is that we gotta figure out. Hank Jones has got some structures, some rigid structures and definitions too that have got to be permeable.
But
Because you'll have
but
some
it is
time.
extremely permanable. The thing about it is, I'm telling everyone, you don't have to believe it. I'm not posting it for to believe it. It's for the individual. You have no idea how many people
That's
you
it.
can reach and you can touch
Right.
when you tell these stories because they can resonate with them and they've had
And
things that
that's
are similar
beautiful.
and
And
then
that's beautiful.
and
But th- but
always.
but then people start saying things about like like factual reality, and it's like it's like waiting for Jesus to come back. It's like is that what we should be doing with this information,
I know,
or
but
should we be allowing it to
who
exist in
asked
the individual?
when was the return of Christ? I'm not going to ask a question like that.
Why not?
Well, if you want to, but I have
But
see,
is
like you say,
is
I have a whole lot of thoughts about it. So if we have that conversation, I'm like you, we're going to delve deep.
would you
We're going
ever?
to delve deep.
Let's say I'm in session, and let's say I'm hypothetically
Okay,
I'm
hold that
clicking.
spot for just a second.
Okay,
Ears, and she's this short, and she has on a shawl, and she lives in the Shire in her little round red room, and she's speaking, and she's like a fucking hobbit, and she goes, "But I'm your mother." And the two deers that we had as pets are your two sisters now in this life. And they're giving you all this information, and all this stuff comes back. And then the woman calls you a year later and say, "Oh my God, Hank, that session that we did, I'm no longer depressed about my mom because I know she's in a good place. I
right.
now have a great job. I'm going back. I found a really good church. And I just want to call you and thank you because I love you so much because there was something about your voice. There's something about you that really helped me get through what I've gotten through." But and another thing that is really, really interesting is when you're doing these sessions and all
You got a
believe
lot of
that the
competition
universe that
out there,
I live in is the same one that you live in. The only
right?
time we're interacting is when we're co-creating together. I mean, as soon as I turn this video off and I don't see you, you know, Dolores Cannon call people background people. That's just background to fill in for what you're focused on while you're here, with what you're doing, what your purpose was, or what your intention was when you decided to lower your vibration into this to physicality to do what we're doing here. All of that stuff really makes sense to me. But I'm 52 years old. It's not from just one particular scenario. It's from so many things that over and over and over and over, these experiences that I've been having, do you know what I'm saying, that lead me to the
Right.
conclusion. But like I always say, and I still, like I say, you don't have to believe everything. And most of the people aren't channeling. They're literally standing in front of. So when the person stands in front of you and she has long dope.
Not a problem.
Okay. So they don't get too. I should have waited till it was 40, but it's all good. But you know, when you have that existential experience of what you had a desire to do when you started, it even says on my website, you can even take a fantasy trip and do whatever you want to do. They have a movie. They have a movie that's out, and it's an old movie, but it's about the future where you can download these memories and go through this whole thing. Through this whole spiel. You don't even need the app. You don't need the technology. You can actually do it. How important is it that if it's absolutely correct what they're saying, if you believe that there's a base on the other side of the moon and you get over there and that's what you see, then that's what you're going to see. But I'm always going to ask question, when is this? Is it within the 2015, 2016
But
timeline?
a
Is
person,
this something from a past? Is it something from the future? Is it something, a
right?
probability? I always ask those questions to make sure, and you just take it however you're going to take it, But
Right. But to deconstruct, is it fair to say that Lars came up with an answer to the question, "What's going on the other side of the moon?" And because of an alternative data set, a conclusion was reached that Lars had come up with the wrong answer, that he was occluded from the truth, that he was scared of the reality of what was happening on the moon, and that's why he saw nothing. Why can't it be that he was correct and all the other jumbos are just pulling from the collective unconscious or what they want to have be real on the other side of the moon? Because we
well,
know that just like
the thing about it is, particular people that I ask are people who haven't watched all my videos, who aren't following, faithfully trying to ascertain everything that's being said and breaking it down and seeing if it's correct or seeing if it's not, or weighing against each other. I always ask it randomly, and particularly to people who I know absolutely nothing about anything. And the thought is still, even no matter what they say, you still have to take it all with a grain of salt. It's not so much that he was so wrong. Do you know what I mean? He said that wasn't there. So, but you have his point is valid. Everyone as hard as it may seem, in my reality, and I probably consider probably the craziest of the crazies as far as I'm concerned, but I don't